name is Jake, and today I am answering another request from my buddy Jack from the Autumn Dogs and the Twice Daily, and I am doing none other than the Jam's magnum opus, sound effects. For those of you who might be unfamiliar with the Jam, they were an English punk mod band formed in 1972, consisting of none other than Paul Weller on guitar and vocals, Bruce Foxton on bass, and Rick Buckler on drums. This is the band's fifth studio album, released November 28th, 1980, and Paul Weller has said that this is the band's best work, and he is definitely not only preaching to the choir, but I would personally consider myself to be a pretty loud voice in that choir. This album, it's one of those things where it's very, they definitely wore their influences on their sleeve, and yet somehow managed to make one of the most unique sounding rock records of the 1980s, if not of all time. This is definitely one of the most standout punk albums ever made, in my opinion. This is one that is definitely like a landmark in my eyes. I really have yet to find a flaw on it. It is from beginning to end one of the best listens in rock music that I have ever heard. It's just the perfect mesh of sort of power pop, punk, mod, and psychedelia that one could ever possibly achieve in any of those four genres. Now, onto the songs. Track 1, Pretty Green. Now, the opening track on the US version of the album is Start, which kind of makes more sense, because it's called... but okay. It's still a fantastic opener, though. It opens up with probably one of my favorite bass lines of all time, just the... And, the whole rhythm section really is on top of it here. And I really love the reverb. I think that's what it is, the reverb effect on Paul Weller's vocals. It's pretty much used throughout the album, but it really shines through here. And the melody during the bridge is... I love this record. I adore the lyrics on this one, too. It's definitely a social commentary song, with Pretty Green being, of course, money. And it's basically just a statement on how money sort of runs the world. You can't do anything if it's not in your pocket. It's true. I think a lot of us kind of get caught up in that we're so sort of desensitized to how much it actually controls our lives. And it's really kind of nauseating to me. So I feel like I can relate to Paul Weller a little bit here for sure. Track 2, Monday. This is a love song, which the Jam were surprisingly very good at. If you've ever heard the song English Rose from their album All Mod Cons, one of the prettiest songs ever. This one could have been a Beatles song. You heard how I said earlier how they sort of wore their influence on their sleeve. This album was heavily influenced, Paul Weller even admitted so, by the Beatles' Revolver. And you could hear it sort of plain as day on, especially some of the other songs on here. But this could have been just any era Beatles song. This one, it's so good, it hurts. Yeah. Is it repetitive as all hell? Absolutely, by all means. But I don't know why. I can't get sick of it. It's like a perfect pop melody, and it's underrated. I'll just say it right then. I'll just put it right out there. This is an underrated song. Track 3, But I'm Different Now. This is sort of a traditional punk song, just in the style of the Jam. They always had their sort of unique sounds, had their own unique spin on things, This one, it's very catchy, and it's kind of, I feel like, just there to add some spice to the album, a little oomph to it, I suppose. Kind of just there to pump you up. But it is a sort of just a great song regardless. Track 4, Set the House Ablaze. This one opens up with hands down my favorite guitar riff that Paul Weller ever wrote. It's the... And it just goes right into one of probably the most intense song on the album. Topically, sonically, even the whistling sort of adds to the sort of tenacity of it. And just the outro, the na 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 na, and you know, just that snare and that crescendo. Oh my gosh, this one is definitely one of the highlights. This one is written sort of in regards to fascism in Europe, and it really shows off how great of a writer Paul Weller really is. He is definitely, I think, one of the most important songwriters of his generation, or if not of all time. He has such a way of capturing the times, and I think he shows all of that off in another song on the album. Track 5, Start. This seems to be about Weller's struggles in the sort of world of romance, and this one is clearly inspired by the Beatles' Taxman, which is, of course, the opening track on Revolver. And I mean, some could say it's, oh, you're ripping it off. I mean, if you saw my last video, you know, there's a difference between sort of ripping it off and paying homage. I feel like this was more just a paying homage type of thing, and it manages to work perfectly. You know, of course, it's got the beautiful bridge, and it leads right into that killer guitar solo, you know, and of course, clearly inspired by the one on Taxman. But it still just sounds so rough and just, although brief, this is probably one of my favorite solos that Weller has ever played. Track 6, That's Entertainment. This is one of the greatest songs ever written, in my opinion. It's about sort of the sort of droll English lifestyle of the 1970s. And the chorus, of course, you know, when he says, that's entertainment, he is, of course, as most of you know, being ironic in that regard. And he tells of this sort of lifestyle in such a way that even just anyone who has never even been to England or whatnot can just totally relate to it. He has that way of writing where even if you have not been in his shoes, you know exactly what he is talking about. Every lyric of this song is actual poetry, I think. I mean, my favorite is, pretty sure most people's favorite. It is, you know, two lovers kissing masks a scream of midnight, two lovers missing the tranquility of solitude. I, of course, adore the chord progression on this, and the la 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 la. They actually add a really nice touch. They are not cheesy in the slightest. And, of course, you know, there is a Revolver influence. If you've heard this song, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The reverse guitar chills down the spine, up the arm. Now, Paul Weller has claimed to have written this in just 10 minutes while drunk, which is where the line pissing down with rain on a boring Wednesday comes from. And it's so funny to hear, you know, sometimes artists talk about their really deep, inventive writing processes, and then here's Paul Weller just completely piss drunk and just churning out better things than pretty much most anybody else. Track 7, Dreamtime. This one once again includes sort of reverse guitar. It opens up with it, and it still sounds just so awesome. And the lyrics definitely seem to me about just sort of social anxiety. And Weller's line delivery definitely adds to that effect. It's very tense, and I definitely could relate to this one, for sure. I mean, you know, again, Paul Weller with that incredible relatability while seemingly not even trying to be. And it's very refreshing. Track 8, Man in the Corner Shop. This is definitely my other favorite. It is melodic perfection. This is a perfect song. I'll just call it what it is. You know, any song with a 12 string, already in my favorites list. Another song that, you know, is written in regards to the sort of British system, but could totally be applied here. You know, it seems to me sort of about how the economic system in Britain sort of seems to pit the working class against itself. Sounds like it rings a bell? Another thing to sort of take note of, this album was released just a little while after Margaret Thatcher was elected Prime Minister. So, yeah, I could only ever imagine Weller's sort of disdain for said system. Track 9, Music for the Last Couple. This one is a sort of abstract intro, and then it just kicks right off into that great riff. I love Weller's guitar tone on here. His voice sounds great as well when he uses it. And, you know, this one is definitely sort of more psychedelic and avant-garde than the rest of the album. Also the only one where all 3 band members have writing credits. So I found that interesting. And it is still a good song regardless, you know. Like I said, you know, this is sort of all of the Jam's influences sort of culminating together as a whole. And I think it fits the album just fine. Track 10, Boy About Town. This is another one of my favorites. Perfect melody, absolutely defining sort of pop punk mod track with a great horn section to boot. The lyrics definitely seem to be sort of embracing the loner lifestyle. I have a feeling me and Paul Weller would get along just fine. Track 11, final track, Scrape Away. As if it wasn't enough to open with an incredible bass line, this album ends with yet another incredible bass line. This band is too good to me. This song is allegedly directed to John Lydon of the Sex Pistols. And, I mean, if you know anything about the history of the Jam and the Sex Pistols, they were not very fond of each other. Paul Weller even got into it with the band's resident poser. Wait, sorry, did I say that? I mean, the band's bass player, Sid Vicious. And because he accused him of ripping off the riff of the Jam song In the City and using it for the song Holiday in the Sun. Which, I mean, I'll let you guys discuss how y'all feel about that. But regardless, you know, Paul's disdain for the Pistols is pretty well known. And it really, he sounds very, very angry at parts here. So I can imagine writing this one definitely sort of struck a nerve for him. But either way, it's an incredible closer to an incredible album. Overall, if you are a fan of punk music or even pop punk music, please give this album a listen. I mean, even if you are a fan of almost any other genre of music, you know, this one definitely makes for an interesting experience, in my opinion. You know, it is just one of those albums that is endlessly just entertaining, for lack of a better term. It's so I think it's very eclectic, you know. Oh, you haven't listened to a lot of music, you don't know what eclectic is. Shut up. I know. Anywho, please indulge yourself in the Jam's music. They are definitely one of the best bands of that whole scene. Thank you guys so much again for watching this video. If you have anything that you would like for me to talk about or see or review, music or film related, please drop it right down below there in the comments. My name is Jake. I'll be back.